Jack Morrison stood on the wooden platform of Clearwater Station, his weathered hands gripping a telegram that had arrived too late. His younger brother was dead. 3 days in the ground before the message ever reached the ranch. The Montana wind cut through his coat, but he barely felt it. Loss had become familiar over the past 2 years since his wife Sarah passed, leaving him alone with memories and 1,000 acres of empty land. The evening train hissed and groaned as it pulled into the station, belching steam into the cold November air. Jack folded the telegram and tucked it into his vest pocket, turning to leave when a commotion erupted from the first passenger car. A woman in an elaborate white dress stumbled down the steps, her veil torn and hanging askew. She clutched a small carpet bag and moved with the desperate energy of a hunted animal. Behind her, a heavy-set man in an expensive suit emerged, his face purple with rage. "Catherine. You get back here right now. We had an agreement." The woman, Catherine, spun around. Even from 20 feet away, Jack could see the terror in her eyes. "That agreement was made by my father, not by me. I won't marry you, Horace Gunderson. I won't spend my life as property." Horace descended the steps with surprising speed for a man of his size. "Your father took my money. $10,000 for your hand. You'll honor that debt, or I'll have the law on both of you." Jack watched as 2 men in dark coats stepped off the train behind Horace. They had the look of hired muscle, not lawmen. This wasn't about legality. This was about ownership and force. Something twisted in Jack's chest, a feeling he thought had died with Sarah. It wasn't love or attraction, not yet. It was simpler than that. It was the basic human instinct to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. Catherine backed away, her eyes darting around the nearly empty platform. The station master had conveniently disappeared. The few other passengers hurried toward the street, wanting no part of whatever drama was unfolding. She was alone, cornered, and out of options. Her gaze landed on Jack, and in that moment, something passed between them. A silent plea. A desperate hope. Jack stepped forward. There you are. I was worried the train might have been delayed." Catherine's eyes widened, but she was sharp enough to catch his intention. "I'm sorry I'm late. The journey was longer than expected." Horace stopped, his eyes narrowing as he looked Jack up and down. He saw a tall man in his early 30s, lean and hard from years of ranch work, with dark hair and blue eyes that held no fear. "Who the hell are you?" "Jack Morrison. This is my wife." The lie came out smooth and natural. Jack had never been good at deception, but this felt different. This felt necessary. Catherine moved closer to him, her hand finding his arm. He could feel her trembling through the layers of fabric. Horace laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Your wife? She's wearing a wedding dress, you fool. She was supposed to marry me this morning in Chicago. She ran out of the church like a coward." Jack looked down at Catherine, reading the truth in her face. She had run. She had chosen freedom over security, uncertainty over a life sentence with a man she feared. He respected that kind of courage more than she could know. "Then I reckon she made her choice," Jack said quietly. "And it wasn't you." Horace's face went from purple to nearly black with rage. He gestured to his 2 companions. "I paid good money for her. She's coming back to Chicago, one way or another." The men started forward, but Jack's hand moved to his hip where his Colt revolver rested. He didn't draw it. He didn't need to. The gesture was enough. Both men stopped, recognizing something in Jack's stance that warned them this wouldn't be as easy as they thought. "This is Montana territory, Mr. Gunderson," Jack said, his voice carrying across the platform. "Out here, we don't take kindly to men who buy and sell women like cattle. The lady says no. That's the end of it." The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Horace Gunderson's hired men exchanged glances, calculating odds they clearly didn't like. Jack Morrison hadn't built his reputation by backing down from trouble, and anyone who knew Montana ranchers understood they were men who meant what they said. The Colt on Jack's hip wasn't for show. Horace finally spoke, his voice dripping with venom. "This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have contracts signed by her father. She's legally promised to me, and I will collect what's mine." Catherine's grip on Jack's arm tightened. He could feel her pulse racing through her glove. "My father had no right to sell me. I'm 23 years old, not a child. Whatever agreement you made with him, I never consented to it." "Your consent wasn't required," Horace sneered. "Your father's debts were considerable. I paid them all. You were part of that transaction whether you like it or not." Jack's jaw clenched. He had known men like Horace before. Rich men from back east who came west thinking money could buy anything, including human dignity. Montana law sees things different. A woman can't be forced into marriage against her will. Not here. Horace pointed a thick finger at Jack. You're making a dangerous enemy, cowboy. I have connections. I have resources. You'll regret interfering in my business. I've had plenty of regrets in my life, Jack said calmly. Helping a woman escape a man like you won't be one of them. The train whistle blew, signaling its imminent departure. Horace looked between Jack and Catherine, his mind clearly working through options. Finally, he smiled, and it was the most unsettling thing Jack had seen in a long time. Fine. Keep her for now. But this dress she's wearing? That cost me $500. The train ticket she used? My money. Everything she has belongs to me. I'll be filing charges for theft, and I'll be back with the territorial marshal. Let's see how brave you feel when the law is involved. He turned and climbed back onto the train, his two men following. As the engine began to pull away, Horace leaned out the window. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, Catherine. I always collect my debts. The train disappeared around the bend, leaving Jack and Catherine alone on the platform. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the wooden planks. Catherine released Jack's arm and stepped back, suddenly aware of the enormity of what had just happened. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have involved you. I was desperate, and you were the only person who looked like you might help. Now he'll come after you too. Jack studied her properly for the first time. Beneath the torn veil and smudged makeup, she was beautiful, with dark auburn hair and green eyes that held both intelligence and fear. But more than her appearance, he saw something else. Strength. The kind that had allowed her to run in the first place. He meant what he said about the law, Jack told her honestly. If your father did sign contracts, if Gunderson did pay money, he might have legal standing. Not for forcing you to marry him, but for theft charges if you took things he paid for. Catherine's face paled. I didn't think about that. I just ran. I had to get away. Where were you planning to go? She looked around the empty platform helplessly. I don't know. Anywhere. I have a little money, enough for a few weeks. I thought maybe I could find work, start over somewhere he couldn't find me. Jack shook his head. Men like Horace Gunderson don't give up. He'll hire detectives. He'll search every town between here and California. His pride is wounded, and that makes him dangerous. Tears welled in Catherine's eyes. Then what do I do? Go back to him? Let him win? No. The word came out harder than Jack intended. He softened his voice. But if you really were my wife, if we made it legal, he'd have no claim. A woman can't be held to a promise of marriage if she's already married to someone else. Catherine stared at him as if he'd spoken a foreign language. You're suggesting we actually get married? But you don't even know me. I don't know you. This is insane. It is, Jack agreed. But I lost my wife 2 years ago to fever. This ranch needs a woman's presence again, and you need protection from a man who sees you as property. It doesn't have to be a real marriage, not in the ways that matter. Just legal papers. Separate rooms. An arrangement for safety. Why would you do this for a stranger? Jack was quiet for a long moment. The truth was complicated. Part of it was simple decency. Part of it was the loneliness that had eaten at him since Sarah's death. And part of it was something he couldn't quite name, a recognition in Catherine's eyes of someone else who had known loss and was fighting to survive despite it. Because someone should, he finally said. And because out here, we help people who need it. That's how we survive. Catherine wiped her eyes, smearing the last of her makeup. She looked down at her ridiculous wedding dress, then back at Jack. If we do this, I want you to know something. I won't be a burden. I can work. I can earn my keep. This won't be charity. Jack almost smiled. I believe you. So what do you say, Miss Catherine? Will you marry me to stay free? She took a deep breath and nodded. Yes. But I need to know your full name if I'm going to marry you. Jack Morrison. I run the Double M Ranch about 15 miles north of here. 300 head of cattle, good water, decent land. Catherine Blake. Daughter of a failed businessman who sold me to pay his gambling debts. She held out her hand. Let's make this legal before Horace comes back with reinforcements. Jack shook her hand, sealing a promise that would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Judge Henry Blackwood lived above the general store in Clearwater, a permanent fixture in the small town for nearly 20 years. He answered Jack's knock with a glass of whiskey in hand and suspicion in his eyes. It was past 8 o'clock, and social calls at this hour usually meant trouble. "Jack Morrison," the judge said, squinting in the lamplight. "What brings you into town? And who's this?" Catherine stood behind Jack, still wearing the torn wedding dress, now covered by Jack's coat. She looked exhausted and terrified, but she held her head high. Jack appreciated that about her. Pride in the face of disaster was a quality he understood. "Judge, I need you to perform a marriage. Tonight." Blackwood's eyebrows shot up. "Marriage? Jack, Sarah's only been gone 2 years. I didn't even know you were courting anyone." "It's complicated," Jack said. "Can we come in?" The judge stepped aside, and they entered his modest quarters. The room smelled of tobacco and old books. Blackwood gestured to chairs while he lit another lamp, brightening the space. His eyes kept returning to Catherine's dress, working through the implications. "You want to tell me what's really going on here?" Jack did, leaving out nothing. He explained about Horace Gunderson, the contracts, the threats, and the need for immediate legal protection. Catherine sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, while Jack laid out the situation with clear, honest words. When he finished, Blackwood poured himself another whiskey and offered the bottle to Jack, who declined. "This is about the most unusual request I've had in 15 years on the bench. You understand what you're proposing, Jack? Marriage isn't something to enter lightly, even as a legal maneuver." "I understand perfectly, Your Honor. But Miss Blake needs protection, and this is the only way I know to provide it that has teeth under the law." Blackwood turned to Catherine. "Young lady, has anyone forced you into this? Is Jack coercing you in any way?" "No, sir," Catherine said firmly. "He's offering me a choice, which is more than anyone else has done in months. I'm entering this willingly." "And you, Jack? You're certain about this?" Jack thought of Sarah, wondering if she would approve. He liked to think she would. Sarah had been practical and kind, 2 qualities that would have made her sympathetic to Catherine's situation. "I'm certain." The judge sighed and set down his glass. "All right. But I want both of you to understand something. Once I perform this ceremony, it's real. Legally binding. Divorce in Montana Territory isn't easy or pleasant. If you're going to do this, you're committing to each other for the foreseeable future. Are you both prepared for that?" Jack and Catherine exchanged glances. Neither had thought much beyond the immediate need for safety. The long-term implications hung in the air between them like smoke. Finally, Catherine spoke. "Judge Blackwood, 3 hours ago I ran away from my own wedding to a man who terrified me. I boarded a train with no destination and no plan beyond escape. This cowboy I've never met risked his safety to protect me from men who would have dragged me back by force. If he's willing to offer me legal protection through marriage, I'm willing to accept, consequences and all." "Jack. I'm standing here, aren't I?" Blackwood pulled out a thick book from his shelf and opened it to a marked page. "I'll need 2 witnesses. Let me wake the Hendersons next door. Tom and Martha won't mind." 10 minutes later, the elderly couple stood yawning in their nightclothes, but their eyes were bright with curiosity. Martha Henderson took one look at Catherine's dress and smiled knowingly, though she had the story completely wrong. She thought this was a romantic elopement, not a desperate measure. Judge Blackwood positioned Jack and Catherine facing each other. In the lamplight, Jack noticed details he'd missed before. A small scar on Catherine's left eyebrow. The way she bit her lower lip when nervous. The strength in her shoulders despite everything she'd been through today. "Do you, Jack Morrison, take this woman, Catherine Blake, to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Jack's throat was suddenly dry. The words reminded him of another wedding, another woman, another promise made with love and hope. But Sarah was gone, and Catherine needed him now. "I do." "Do you, Catherine Blake, take this man, Jack Morrison, to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Catherine's voice was steady. "I do. By the power vested in me by Montana Territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jack, you may kiss your bride." The room went silent. Neither Jack nor Catherine had anticipated this moment. They stood frozen, unsure how to proceed. Martha Henderson cleared her throat meaningfully. This was supposed to be a wedding, after all. Jack leaned forward and pressed a brief, gentle kiss to Catherine's cheek. It was chaste and respectful, but Catherine's sharp intake of breath told him she'd felt it just as much as he had. Something electric passed between them, unexpected and unwelcome given the circumstances. Judge Blackwood recorded the marriage in his official register, and Tom and Martha signed as witnesses. Catherine's hand shook as she signed her new name for the first time, Catherine Morrison. The ink seemed to seal her fate in more ways than one. "Congratulations," Martha said warmly, hugging Catherine. "Welcome to Clearwater, dear. You'll have to tell me all about how you two met." "Another time, Martha," Jack said gently. "It's been a long day. We should head back to the ranch." Outside, the November night had grown colder. Stars blazed overhead in the clear Montana sky. Jack helped Catherine into his wagon, and they rode through the empty streets in silence. The weight of what they'd done settled over both of them like a heavy blanket. Finally, Catherine spoke. "Thank you. I know this wasn't what you planned for today. Neither was finding out my brother died 3 days ago and I didn't know." Catherine turned to him, her eyes wide. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. And here I am, dragging you into my problems when you're dealing with loss." "Life doesn't wait for convenient timing," Jack said quietly. "We deal with what comes." They rode on into the darkness, two strangers now legally bound, heading toward an uncertain future on a ranch Catherine had never seen, to live a life neither had chosen but both desperately needed. Dawn broke over the Double M Ranch as Jack's wagon crested the final hill. Catherine had dozed fitfully during the 2-hour journey, exhausted from a day that felt like it had lasted a lifetime. Now, as morning light painted the valley gold, she got her first look at what would be her new home. The ranch house was larger than she'd expected, a solid 2-story structure of hewn logs and stone. A wide porch wrapped around the front, and smoke already rose from the chimney. Outbuildings dotted the property, a barn, a stable, a smokehouse, and several structures whose purposes Catherine could only guess. In the distance, cattle grazed across rolling hills that stretched to mountains on the horizon. "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. Jack looked at his ranch as if seeing it through her eyes. "Sarah and I built the house together. Took us 2 years. She wanted it big enough for the family we planned to have." His voice caught. "That never happened." Catherine heard the pain beneath his words and chose to respect it with silence. They had both lost futures they'd planned. Now they were improvising new ones in real time. A Mexican man in his 50s emerged from the barn, his weathered face breaking into a smile when he saw Jack. Then his eyes landed on Catherine, still wearing the ridiculous wedding dress under Jack's coat, and his expression turned to astonishment. "Heifer, what is this?" "Miguel, this is Catherine. My wife. We got married last night in town." Miguel's jaw dropped. He stared at Jack, then at Catherine, then back at Jack. "Your wife? But boss, yesterday you went to get supplies. How do you come back married?" Jack climbed down from the wagon and helped Catherine descend. Her legs were stiff from the journey, and she stumbled slightly. Jack's hand steadied her, warm and strong. "It's a long story. I'll explain everything. Right now, Catherine needs food, rest, and clothes that weren't meant for someone else's wedding." Miguel continued staring as if Jack had brought home a mountain lion and declared it a house cat. But years of working together had taught him when to ask questions and when to simply accept what life brought. "Sigh, of course. Welcome, Senora Morrison. I will make breakfast." Inside, the house was neat but clearly lacked a woman's touch. Functional furniture, clean surfaces, but no decoration or warmth. Sarah's absence was a presence all its own. Catherine felt like an intruder stepping into another woman's space. Jack showed her upstairs to a bedroom at the end of the hall. It was simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the eastern valley. This was going to be a guest room. "It's yours now. I'm down the hall. The washroom is between our rooms." Catherine set down her small carpet bag, which contained everything she owned in the world. "Jack, we should talk about the arrangements. What you expect from me." He leaned against the doorframe, suddenly looking as exhausted as she felt. "I don't expect anything except honesty. This is your home now, for as long as you need it. You're not a servant, and you're not obligated to me beyond what the law requires for appearances. We're partners in this, Catherine. Equals. But the ranch, the work. We'll figure it out together. Right now, you need to rest. We both do. Later, we'll talk about how this will work." After he left, Catherine collapsed onto the bed and cried for the first time since running away. The emotions she'd held back finally broke free: fear, relief, gratitude, and overwhelming uncertainty about what came next. She'd escaped Horace, but she traded one unknown future for another. The next few days passed in a strange blur. Catherine learned the rhythms of ranch life, discovering she had a natural affinity for animals and hard work. Miguel proved invaluable, teaching her about cattle, horses, and the 1,000 tasks required to keep a ranch running. He spoke little about the past but watched Catherine with protective eyes, as if evaluating whether she would hurt Jack, who he clearly regarded as more than an employer. Jack maintained respectful distance, but Catherine caught him watching her sometimes. Not with desire or possession like Horace had, but with quiet curiosity, as if trying to figure out who she really was beneath the circumstances that brought them together. On the 4th day, Catherine was feeding chickens when a rider appeared. Her heart seized with terror that Horace had returned, but Jack emerged from the barn with his rifle and called out a greeting. The rider was the territorial marshal, a lean man named Coleman with sharp eyes and a badge pinned to his leather vest. "Jack Morrison," Coleman said, dismounting. "Got an interesting telegram from Chicago. Man named Horace Gunderson claims you're harboring stolen property and a woman who's legally promised to him." Catherine's blood ran cold. Jack stepped forward calmly. "Catherine Morrison is my wife, Marshal. We were married 4 days ago by Judge Blackwood. You can verify the records." Coleman's eyes found Catherine. "That true, You married this man willingly?" "Yes, sir. Completely willingly. Gunderson claims you ran out on a wedding to him, took expensive items he'd paid for." Catherine lifted her chin. "I took nothing that belonged to him. The dress I wore belonged to my father, paid for from money my mother left me before she died. Horace Gunderson paid my father's debts, yes, but I was never property to be sold. I didn't consent to marry him, and Montana law supports a woman's right to refuse." Coleman studied her carefully. "Gunderson is threatening legal action. Says he's coming back to Montana with lawyers and proof of contracts." "Let him come," Jack said quietly. "Catherine is my legal wife. Whatever arrangements Gunderson made with her father are void now. She's under my protection, and I'll defend that protection with everything I have." The marshal nodded slowly. "I needed to hear it from both of you. Gunderson struck me as the type who buys what he wants and expects the world to agree. But the law is clear. If Miss Blake, pardon me, Mrs. Morrison, married you of her own free will, then Gunderson has no legal claim, contracts or not." Relief flooded through Catherine so powerfully her knees nearly buckled. Jack noticed and moved closer, ready to catch her if needed. "However," Coleman continued, "I'd be prepared for trouble. Men like Gunderson don't accept defeat easily. He has money and connections. This might not be over." "I understand," Jack said. "Thank you for coming out here, Marshal. I appreciate you hearing our side." After Coleman left, Catherine turned to Jack. "He will come back. Horace doesn't lose. Ever. Then we'll be ready." Jack's eyes were hard. "You're Catherine Morrison now. That means something out here. It means you're not alone anymore." For the first time since running, Catherine allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found not just safety but something that could become a real home. 3 weeks passed in relative peace. Catherine threw herself into ranch life with determination that impressed even Miguel, who'd been skeptical at first. She learned to ride, to manage the ranch accounts, to cook for hungry ranch hands. Slowly, the Double M began to feel less like a refuge and more like home. Jack found himself watching her more often, noticing small things. The way she laughed at Miguel's terrible jokes. How she talked to the horses like they were old friends. The quiet strength she showed when things went wrong. She was nothing like Sarah, but that was becoming okay. Catherine was her own person, fighting to build something new from the ashes of her old life. Late November brought the first serious snow. Jack was repairing fence line when he saw dust rising from the eastern road. Multiple riders, moving fast. His gut tightened with recognition before his mind caught up. Trouble was coming. He rode hard back to the ranch, finding Catherine hanging laundry despite the cold. "Get inside. Now. Take Miguel and bar the doors. Don't come out until I say." Catherine's eyes went wide, but she didn't waste time with questions. She dropped the laundry and ran for the house, calling for Miguel. Jack grabbed his rifle from the barn and positioned himself on the porch, standing between whatever was coming and the home they'd built. 6 riders appeared, Horace Gunderson, his 2 hired men from the train station, and 3 more who had the hard look of professional gunfighters. They reined up 20 yards from the house, spreading out in a practice formation that told Jack this wasn't about talking. Horace dismounted slowly, his expensive coat dusted with road dirt. "Morrison. I told you I'd be back." You're not welcome here, Gunderson. This is private property, and you're trespassing. I'm here to collect what's mine. Catherine belongs to me. I have documents proving her father signed contracts. Catherine Morrison is my legal wife, Jack said evenly. Whatever papers you're waving around don't mean anything. She made her choice. It wasn't you. Horace's face flushed with familiar rage. You think some frontier marriage changes anything? I own her debt. I own her future. She's coming back to Chicago with me, one way or another. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Horace gestured to his hired guns. These men are professionals, Cowboy. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Be smart. Hand her over, and we'll leave peacefully. Jack's finger rested near his rifle trigger. He knew he couldn't win this fight through violence. 6 against 1 were impossible odds, especially with 3 professional killers in the mix. But surrender wasn't an option either. Think, he told himself. Find another way. Behind him, the door opened. Catherine stepped onto the porch despite his orders to stay inside. She wore one of Sarah's old dresses now, her hair pulled back, looking every inch a rancher's wife. I'm not going with you, Horace. I'd rather die here than live as your property. Dramatic as always, Horace sneered. You don't have a choice, Catherine. Your father's signature is legal. The money I paid is real. You're mine by law. Montana law says different, a new voice called out. Marshal Coleman rode into view, accompanied by 4 deputies. But they weren't alone. Behind them came Judge Blackwood, and behind him, a dozen ranchers from neighboring properties. Tom Henderson was there, and Martha, carrying her husband's old rifle. Miguel emerged from the barn with a shotgun. Even the ranch hands who'd been working the north pasture appeared, armed and ready. Jack's throat tightened with emotion he didn't expect. His community, his people, had come when called. Miguel must have ridden for help the moment he saw trouble coming. Coleman dismounted and walked between Jack and Horace's men. Mr. Gunderson, I thought I made myself clear 3 weeks ago. Mrs. Morrison is legally married. Your claim is void. I have contracts. You have papers that attempted to sell a human being against her will, Judge Blackwood interrupted, his voice hard. Montana territory doesn't recognize such transactions. Whatever money you paid her father was a poor business decision on your part. You have no legal standing here. Horace looked around at the assembled crowd, calculating odds that had shifted dramatically against him. His hired guns were professionals, but they weren't suicidal. Fighting through this many armed defenders would be a massacre, and they knew it. This isn't over, Horace said, his voice shaking with impotent rage. I have lawyers. I have connections in Washington. I'll tie you up in courts for years. Then you'll lose in courts instead of dying here today, Coleman said flatly. That seems like the better option. Now get off this property before I arrest you for trespassing and threatening behavior. For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension stretched like a wire ready to snap. Then Horace turned to Catherine, his eyes burning with hatred. You'll regret this. Both of you. I never forget, and I never forgive. Good, Catherine said, her voice stronger than Jack had ever heard it. Remember that I chose freedom over your money. Remember that I chose a man who respects me over one who tried to own me. Remember that you lost. Horace mounted his horse with jerky, angry movements. His hired men followed suit, clearly relieved to be leaving without bloodshed. They rode east without looking back, disappearing into the afternoon light. The crowd erupted in cheers and backslapping. Martha Henderson hugged Catherine like she was her own daughter. Ranchers congratulated Jack on his marriage, and several made jokes about the unconventional courtship. The tension broke into relief and celebration. Marshal Coleman approached Jack quietly. That was close. If we'd been 10 minutes later. I know. Thank you for coming. Thank Miguel. He rode into town like the devil was chasing him, rounded up everyone he could find. Said his boss needed help. Coleman glanced at Catherine. She's something special, Jack. Don't let her go. After everyone left and the sun set over the mountains, Jack and Catherine stood on the porch alone. The ranch was quiet again, peaceful, but everything felt different now. They'd stood together against real danger and come through it because of each other. I meant what I said, Catherine told him. I'd rather die free than live as someone's property. I know. That's why I married you. She turned to face him fully. This was supposed to be an arrangement. Legal protection, nothing more. But it doesn't feel like that anymore. Jack's heart hammered in his chest. Over 3 weeks, Catherine had become more than a woman he was protecting. She'd become a partner, a friend, someone he looked forward to seeing each morning. No. It doesn't. What does it feel like to you? He thought about Sarah, about loss and grief and the fear of caring again. He thought about Catherine's courage, her laughter, the way she transformed his empty house back into a home. Like maybe something that started as necessity could become something real. If you wanted that. Catherine moved closer. I ran away from a man who wanted to own me. But choosing to stay with a man who respects me, who sees me as an equal. That's not running away. That's running towards something better. Are you sure? This life is hard. The winters are brutal. The work never ends. It's not the comfortable future you could have had. Horace's future wasn't comfortable. It was a cage made of silk and money. This? She gestured at the ranch, bathed in twilight. This is real. You're real. What we're building here is real. Jack reached out and took her hand, feeling the calluses she'd earned from 3 weeks of honest work. Then let's build it together. For real this time. Not an arrangement, but a marriage. Yes, Catherine said, and kissed him. It wasn't like the brief, formal kiss at their wedding. This was real, full of promise and possibility. When they broke apart, Jack saw tears on Catherine's cheeks, but she was smiling. I never thanked you properly, she whispered. You saved my life that day at the station. No, Jack said, pulling her close. You saved mine. I just didn't know how lost I was until you showed me what it felt like to have purpose again. They stood together as stars emerged overhead, two people who'd met as strangers in desperation and found something neither expected. A real chance at happiness, built on respect, partnership, and the courage to choose freedom over everything else. The widowed cowboy and the runaway bride had become something more. They'd become husband and wife in truth, and they'd become each other's home. The end.